Susan's mentioned what I've been as a webs organizer since September 1994, so I'll go on to the next slide. Oh no, you've got control of my screen.
Oh, sorry, right. Give up. There you are. It's all yours.
Right, try again. That's that. Just now then, why isn't it working? It should go on to the next one with a click, but it's not on either screen. And it's not even doing that if I click the icons of the different pages on the left. Resume slideshow. I might need that, right? Try it now. Nope. Isn't technology wonderful?
It's just because you're using two screens. That's
well, no, well, yeah, possibly true. But it worked when we had to go a couple of weeks ago.
Well, yes, it did, but yeah. Well, if you right,
it's not doing it that way either.
Could I suggest, if you can bear it, if you give me the remote access again, I'll change the slides for you.
Okay.
Next, like I did for Jim. I'll try to. Okay.
Yeah, that's it. Well, next screen, please.
Golly.
Well, you've changed it on my notes screen.
I'm on the wrong screen. Oh, goodness me. Right. But not on the one we need.
No, you're just still seeing the first screen.
Right. Marilyn, have you any suggestions? I will give up the remote control and see if you can get back. Or alternatively, can we just use your screen, your other screen?
Neil,
Appropriate.
If you stop the presentation and start it again.
Yeah, I'm just looking at do I go back to from the beginning then? Do I click that one, or how do I? Well, is there an actual stop the presentation button somewhere?
It's probably at the top.
Yeah, I'm looking at them. Yeah.
In PowerPoint. Alternatively, use the forward and back arrow keys to advance the slide.
Oh, there we are. That's the answer, right? I presume you're seeing it now.
Well,
Yep.
we've gone back to the first slide, so if you.
I do. Well, I'm on my main screen that you're seeing. It's gone to Wetland Bird Survey.
Yep.
Right.
You're seeing that, are you, Marilyn?
Yes.
Yeah.
Several pictures of birds.
Yes.
Hi. Okay, I know what to do now. Sorted. Okay, right. What is webs? And several of you will be familiar with and probably participate in the survey. However, for those that don't, this is a brief background. Organised UK wildfowl counts were initiated in 1947 by the grandly titled International Wildfowl Inquiry Committee, the IWIC, with the Wildfowl Trust, now the Wildfowl and Wetlands Trust, at Slimbridge taking over in 1954. The current Wetland Bird Survey, WEBS, was launched in 1993 with the remit to count all water bird species from divers to kingfisher. This was initially run by the WWT before being transferred to the BTO at Thetford, which is in Norfolk, in 2004. It's currently funded equally by the BTO, and yes, I think is my pointer working there? At the bottom there, can you see my pointer? No? The BTO, the GINCC, and the RSPB. Counts are monthly, usually on a designated date, with the core season of September to March being the period covered by this talk. Wildfowl. In this instance, wildfowl comprise of divers, grebes, cormorants, herons, swans, ducks, sawbills, rails and calinules. So-called grey geese, as you can see, there aren't included because they're poorly monitored by daytime counts as they're away feeding on stubble fields or wherever. I don't know if anybody can hear me. Oh, you can hear me,
Yes.
but the forward button isn't working now.
Arrow key?
Yeah, talking about the arrow key isn't working now. All of a sudden it stopped.
Should be.
Isn't-
Is your pointer on that screen or on your other screen?
Hold on.
Pointer there.
That's it, yeah, because I've got to have the pointer on that screen, you're right.
Yeah.
Live and learn. Well, here you can see the upper fourth, the SOC's upper fourth bird recording area, which is the region that is covering in the talk. And you can see here that the red line is the outline. And just ignore the wee SOC icon there. Came with the map and I can't find a way to remove it. The estuary isn't included in this, it's the inland counts, and covers all still in water bodies, still inland water bodies, and linear water features, the rivers and the canals. Also doesn't include Loch Earn up here, because 3/4 of Loch Earn are actually in Perth and Kinross. And the rivers, the tidal rivers, are the Forth, the Devon and the Carron, and both the Forth and the Devon are counted down as far as Cambus, and the River Carron is down far down as a 905 at Glennsborough, and then the areas are counted as part of the estuary counts, the rest of those rivers, such as they are. And here's some statistics for 25 years. You can see that the number of wildfowl counted is, you can see the number there, just short of 1 million. And then in the last 2 winters, despite COVID restrictions, a further 67,799 wildfowl were counted during the during the last 2 winters, which has raised the total number to over 1 million, 1,017,321 birds to be exact. And 71% of these birds are counted on the still water sites, and you can see the number of individual counts in the 25 years there, and the remainder, the 29%, on linear water sites, which I've mentioned are rivers and canals, and that's the number of kilometres walked during that time to undertake these counts on the linear features. And each web season, roughly 50 people counters participate, and during that time, as you can see, 172 different people have taken part, and great debt of gratitude is due to all of those, and some of whom are sadly no longer with us. And I'm going to use the last of those 25 seasons, stroke winters, the 2018-19 one, just as an example of a typical winter. And as you can see, how many still sites and river and canal had at least one visit. And in that season, 56 counters made, as you can see, 695 individual counts, still waters, and there you can see almost 900 kilometres of linear waterways were perambulated. And these counts as you can see again, resulted in an exact total of 42,000 wildfowl. It's always annoying when loads of numbers or counts are added together and come to such a round number. People think that you just estimated it. With again 71.5% on still waters, 28.5% on linear waters, which is almost exactly the same as the ratio for the whole of the 25 years. And a graph, the first of a few. Lots of numbers lend themselves to graphs. And yeah, graph, and I say I make no apology for this. I know lots of people don't like graphs for some reason. I can't understand why. This is a picture said to tell 1,000 words. Well, I think a graph does the same. And this graph shows a steady decline over those 25 years, but with a few blips, mostly on the downside, unfortunately. And the lowest of these, you can see, when the highest monthly total was in the 2009-10 winter, when the temperature, if you remember, didn't rise above freezing between the 10th of December and the 11th of January. And the same happened to some extent the next year as well, when it was pretty much the same, but a little bit more of that later. Thankfully, numbers have risen slightly, or a bit, not up to the highs of the late 90s, but in the 1819 season, almost 7,000 birds were counted. And here just shows which months have the highest numbers, and you can see heavily loaded towards the midwinter months of December and January. And moving on to the top three sites, main sites, still sites in the Upper Forth bird recording area, and in third place is Cambusmore Gravel Pit, which over that period of the 25 years has averaged 281 birds a month. There's obviously far fewer in September and March than there are in the midwinter months, as I've said. Second place is Lake of Menteith, an average of 301 birds a month, and Gartmore Dam, well known by almost all of you, I'd imagine, which is by far and away during that time the most important site for wildfowl, with 727 birds a month. We now go on to these in reverse order. And here are the various extraction stages of the new main pond at Cambusmore Gart. This is looking probably northwestwards, just north of west. You can see snow-capped Benledi there in the background. Another picture of the excavation taking place, and a photograph now of as it is now in its completed stage after extraction, as I say, is completed. And you can just see here, this is Gart Farm, and you can just see the, I think it's 60s or 70s housing estate that lies on the southwest corner of Callander. And here's what they can look like once they become established. This is the lower east pond, which is the extraction stopped before I started counting 25 years ago. And in a short time already, the gorse, etc., winds are starting to establish themselves all the way around here. And here we have the average monthly count per season over that time. And again, it's fluctuated. And the reason for this is basically because there's been continuous extraction over that time, and with the terrain changing constantly, the number and variety of birds did so. And especially during this period, when the main pond that I've just shown you pictures of was being dug out, and gravel and sand was being extracted from it. These high numbers here, when that area of the main pond were still the Ghat fields, grazed fields. And there was two ponds there, a Ghat pond, larger Ghat pond, and a smaller pond up near the farm, which had been from extractions a good while in the past, I don't know how many years, probably 30 or 40 years before. And in between, as I said, was this very lush grassland, which was greatly favoured by the likes of widgeon, teal and geese, and especially the widgeon and teal numbers were quite large in those days. But you can see now that starting to recover here, and recovered even more again in the last two winters, with an average of 267 birds, which is almost exactly the same as there in the 1920 winter. And then last winter, an average of 335 birds, which is getting up towards this level, which actually, which you'll see later, made it the highest or the most important site for inland water birds that season. And I'm just trying to operate two screens here. And these are four main wintering species. And the first one here you see is little grebe, and maximum count 42 in September 2012. September always sees the highest numbers of little grebe. There are a few nests there as well, but midsummer there'd only be about 10 or 11. And I presume that little grebe like to nest on small, well-vegetated ponds. And as I said, I'm presuming that in September, the breeding pairs and their young congregate on the likes of Canvas Moor, where there's probably lots of small fish. And then the numbers gradually decline as you go through the winter. And widgeon, as I mentioned before, they really like the Ghat grass fields adjacent to the old Ghat pond back in the late 90s, early 2000s. You see there the maximum count, what the maximum count was in December 2000. You still get good numbers there, actually, surprisingly, even though there's apparently very little for them to feed on. It must be habit, because in January of this year there were 274 there. And exactly the same applied to teal, and high count there, as you can see, and when it was. And in January this year, I counted exactly 320. Numbers of the last bird that the site's especially important for is in winter is tufted duck, and you can see that the maximum count was relatively recently. And also in recent years, in summers, July and August, they breed there, one or two broods, but also it seems to become a molting site for them. And the largest count was about 2 or 3 summers ago in August, when I did a visit there and counted around about 150 tufted ducks. And in second place of importance during those 25 years is the Lake of Menteith. And here you can see an aerial, a satellite picture taken from the BTO's Webb's site, with the Lake of Menteith outlined in blue. Those people who do count for Webb's will know that as well as the actual water bodies, that the first field surrounding the site of the water body is also inclusive as part of the site. And for the Lake of Menteith, the malling fields here are counted as well as part of the site. The rest of the area that none of no water birds actually use any of the surrounding areas. Just a very poor internet picture of the aerial picture looking north across the Lake of Menteith. It's the best one I could find, unfortunately. And this is from one of the sites on the Lake of Menteith, just in here, that I stated count, and in the distance is Ben Lomond, without any snow on it. A site like this actually takes about, in midwinter, about 3 hours to count from a number of sites to be able to cover it. Starting off here at the Historic Scotland Pier, here for a brief period to count the bay. This site here, where I can count right across here, and then down here at Loch End to count the southeast corner, drive back round to the fish cages on the main, the 81, is it? The 81 road. Looking into the sun normally, because I try to go on sunny days, and then finally driving down the Malling Farm Road and across the fields to count this area. The average monthly counts have only declined slightly for the Lake of Menteith. They did fluctuate, and the lowest count, the lowest average monthly count of 137 was again in the 2009-10 winter, when it was frozen solid for most of December and January. And then next winter, as I mentioned previously, the average monthly count was only 160, when it was again icebound from late November until mid-January. And virtually, if not all, at some stage, birds left the Lake of Menteith to find open water, often on the sea or a lot further south. One advantage, though, it's an ill wind, or in this case, not really a wind, was it? But was able to walk out across the Lake of Menteith for the first time to the islands. I'd been by boat to reach my home before, but then to walk out to the smaller islands to the west, one of which has got a small ruined castle, which some of you will be aware of, but is virtually invisible, certainly in summer, because of the tree cover. And again, the birds that like the Lake of Menteith in winter. One is the great crested grebe. Excuse me, it's the premier breeding site for great crested grebe in the Upper Forth. And although in the early winters, late 90s, early 2000s, that they'd completely desert the Lake of Menteith in winter, in past winters, they've stayed there with possibly just a minimum of 9 or 10, even in midwinter, a sign of global warming, perhaps. And these next 3 species are all wintering species. And although goldeneye numbers here, male goldeneye displaying, they've remained fairly stable throughout the 25 years, with the highest numbers in February and March. Tufted duck numbers and coot numbers fluctuate quite markedly. Reasons for this aren't absolutely known, but the possible causes are variable food availability. And I've noticed this at other sites in the Upper Forth, that some years smaller sites can all of a sudden have 40 or 50 coot, and then for a few winters none at all. So it might just depend on the growing season for aquatic vegetation. Another reason as well, especially for coot, is the so-called short stopping. where inland bodies on the near continent aren't freezing up like they used to do, and hence there's no need for them to travel any further west. And again, it's just another indication, presumably, of global warming. And finally, Gartmon Dam, which I'd imagine quite a few of you know very well and have walked around quite a few times. And I'm not sure if these ones in the distance play. I don't know if they're mute swans or geese or gulls. I think, judging where they are, there's a good chance that those are mute swans. But anyway, that's looking across to the Ochils, obviously. Cool. Right, as you can see from this graph, that the numbers have fallen dramatically since 1994-5 season, when they averaged over 1,000 or 1,300 birds per visit per month, and they dropped fairly markedly, fairly quickly. Mike Callan was counting them at this stage, and then other people since, variety of people have counted it since, and numbers have fluctuated a little bit, but are far fewer. The highest monthly average for the for the Gartmon Dam was 1,871 birds in 1989-9, and the highest individual count, monthly count, was 2,784 birds in January 1994. This fall, although these low counts of fall have unfortunately continued, with last winter's average being only 206, the lowest ever. And this resulted in Gartmon relinquishing its normal place at the top of the table, to sit fourth. Actually, see if I can go. I'd missed out saying something about Gartmon Dam on a previous picture. Was that it was the first site to be counted for wildfowl, inland site to be counted for wildfowl in what was Central Region, and first counted by Tom Patterson. Now, I don't know if any of you knew him or remember him, in 1962. And the birds that favour Gartmon Dam are, as you can see, mute swans. They've actually, numbers have increased, I would say, in recent winters. You see there the maximum count was only in November 2018. And again, those of you that are familiar with Gartmon Dam will know that they congregate at the car parks and the cafe to compete with mallard and fight for the scraps and the grain that's thrown out by many visitors. Widgeon again were a big user of Gartmon Dam in the past, and you can see there the estimated count, I would say, of 1,150 birds in December 1995. As you still get widgeon there, but nothing like those numbers. It'd be unusual for them to be over 100 these days. Now, with the 25 years, or before the 25 years of this talk, the maximum count for a widgeon was 1,260 in January 1994. And again, tufted duck use it in larger numbers than widgeon now. Maximum count, as you can see, during the 25 years was 422 in October 2012. The highest ever count for tufted duck was 807 in February 1972. And coot, you can see a coot duffing up a moorhen. The maximum count during the 25-year period was 810 in December 1996. And however, and I don't have a total for that, could well be the highest ever count. Coot only started being counted, could well have been in the mid-90s or early 90s as wildfowl, inverted commas. Initially, the wildfowl counts were just that, wildfowl. And mallard numbers have also decreased markedly from a high of 1,531 in December 1978 to a monthly maximum of just 130 in November 2018. Turning now to rivers and canals, which as I said provide almost 30% of the birds. And just another aerial view here taken from the internet, and of poor quality therefore. And this is looking northwards or northeastwards over Meiklewood House, and you can see here how the River Forth winds its way around Meiklewood, and this section is counted by Derek Irving. Another satellite view taken from the BTO website, the River Devon between Tullibody and Menstrie, which you'll all recognise, I'm sure. This section here has been counted for a good number of years by the head of the BTO in Scotland, Dr. Christopher Vernon. And this section from Tullibody Bridge down to the A907 has been counted for even longer, at least 2 decades, by Ken and Tina Wilkinson. And canals as well, they provide good numbers of birds, and they're a nice pleasant walk along the towpath. And this is, as you can see here, the Forth and Clyde Canal at Bonnybridge, looking east. And
Neil, can I give you a 5-minute warning?
Yeah, sure, I'm almost there.
Right, okay, thanks.
Right, okay. Okay, so quickly through, let's bring all of these up at once then. And here we are with, just to show basically how, in general, the rivers, this is the Forth, the Devon and the Carron, numbers of birds increase per linear km as you go downstream, as would be expected, but rise rapidly as soon as a river becomes tidal, as here in the case of the Forth, the Devon and the Carron. Whereas along the Forth and Clyde Canal, they tend to be more even. And the birds that are found more so on these are, as well as the ubiquitous heron, 62% of the herons recorded are found on these linear waterways, 57% of the goosanders, and 46% of the geese, of the teal. And just as well as finally, my notes. Yeah, as well as monitoring overall numbers and the relative importance of sites, changing fortunes of species also becomes apparent. Here, a pochard, a species that had a catastrophic collapse, as you can see in numbers, and that's the maximum monthly count in 94.5 was 354, and you can see that the trend line goes to minus, but it obviously won't do that. But the 17 was the maximum monthly count in 1819, and that's continued falling has fallen even further. This last winter, the maximum monthly count was only 2 birds in March. Reasons for this are a combination of the so-called short stopping again, but poachers build their nests among black-headed gull nesting colonies for protection, and there are far fewer black-headed gull nesting colonies across a number of European countries, including Norway, Germany and Latvia, where our poachers come from mostly, and also explosions of plants and algae in wetlands and waterways caused by nutrients washing off farmland has prevented poachers and other birds from diving for food. Right, I'll just, all right, I don't have time to say anything about little grebe, but except that their numbers are doing well, they've increased. So you can see there quickly from the increase there from the graph. And thank you for listening.